There's something timeless about the soulmate trope. The idea that two people are destined to find each other across lifetimes, galaxies, or impossible odds is undeniably powerful. It's a familiar narrative in romance, and for a good reason. It taps into a deep longing, the comfort of knowing there's someone out there who just gets you, whose soul is already linked to yours. But while this kind of love story can be beautiful, it also opens up questions, especially around choice, agency, and what love really looks like when fate is involved. This is where Sylus comes in for me. In Love and Deepspace, Sylus is soul-bound to MC. In his myth Beyond Cloudfall, their souls become merged. By the end of the myth, MC curses his soul to never disappear, binding him to her beyond death, beyond time. Now, the events of Beyond Cloudfall take place on a planet called Philos. Now, whether you want to believe that this is the same Philos that Xavier comes from, or whether it's an alternative Philos, the fact remains the same. What really matters is the bond between Sylus and MC. In the myth, they give each other half of their soul, making them soulmates in the truest, most literal sense. It's a connection that goes beyond time, space, and even memory. One that ties them together, no matter the world or version of themselves. Whether this is the future or something else entirely, their bond is fated, something that was always going to happen. Their connection is intense, emotional, and stretches beyond memory and time. On paper, he fits the mold of the fated lover. But what sets Sylus apart, what makes his story so emotionally complex, is that he never treats this bond as a guarantee. After their first emotionally fraught meeting in the present, which I'll touch on later, he steps back. He doesn't demand her affection, even when he remembers everything and she remembers nothing. Instead, he offers space. He waits, he asks, and he hopes, but he never takes. In a story shaped by destiny and deep-rooted connections, Sylus's approach is a refreshing reminder that love still needs to be chosen. So, I'm going to explore how Sylus redefines what it means to be bound to someone, not by rejecting the idea of soulmates entirely, but by reshaping what that bond can look like when consent and autonomy are prioritized. His story invites a more nuanced interpretation of fate-driven romance, one that doesn't strip characters of their agency, but rather allows love to be something that is built, not just inherited. I'll begin by looking at what consent really means in the context of Sylus and MC's relationship, not just in a physical sense, but emotionally and psychologically. Then I'm going to examine the idea of autonomy, drawing from psychological research that shows how crucial agency is in healing, self-identity, and building healthy relationships. Finally, I'm going to look at the soulmate trope itself, not to critique it, but to explore how Sylus's narrative exists within it, while gently subverting its more rigid or traditional aspects. Psychological studies, like those rooted in self-determination theory, show us that people thrive in relationships where their autonomy is respected. Sylus's actions mirror this kind of emotional intelligence. He doesn't push, he doesn't assume, and even when he's hurting, he doesn't use their bond as leverage. His love may be written in the stars, but he never stops asking MC for what she wants. At its core, Sylus's story isn't about rewriting the soulmate trope, it's about adding layers to it. He reminds us that even when souls are bound, hearts still have to choose. And when they do, that choice carries more meaning than fate ever could. When we talk about consent, it's easy to focus only on physical intimacy, but in reality, and especially in stories like Love and Deepspace, consent goes far beyond that. It's emotional, it's psychological, and it's about allowing someone the space to feel what they feel without pressure, expectations, or conditions. And that's something Sylus, despite all of his intensity and longing, seems to understand deeply. Now, I want to take us back to Sylus's myth Beyond Cloudfall. In this life, Sylus is a dragon, a creature of immense power, feared and hunted, capable of consuming human souls. But there's a catch. He can only feed on a soul if it is offered willingly. The soul must choose to surrender. Sylus, even in his most primal, magical form, is bound by the principle of consent. No matter how powerful he is, no matter how deep the bond, no matter how hungry the longing, he cannot take what isn't freely given. MC holds that choice entirely in her hands. What's remarkable about this is that it isn't actually framed as a weakness. It's framed as a rule of his existence. Consent, even at the mythological level, is non-negotiable. That choice, the willingness of the soul, is what gives the bond between them so much meaning. It's a powerful metaphor for the central emotional dynamic of the present-day narrative. Love, trust, and connection cannot be demanded, even when a bond feels written in fate. Whether it's a soul bond, a curse, or even a cosmic tie spanning lifetimes, the underlying truth remains the same. Nothing real can be taken, it must be offered. In this way, Sylus is not just a subversion of the possessive lover or dominant soulmate archetype. He becomes a symbol of what power looks like when shaped by restraint. The dragon, which is often a symbol of untamable force, becomes a creature bound by ethics, by consent, by the will of another. And rather than rejecting that limitation, Sylus accepts it. He built his identity around it. He waits, not because he is weak, but because he understands that love without choice isn't love at all. From the moment he and MC are reunited, Sylus is placed in a complicated position. He remembers everything. She remembers nothing. He's soulbound to her, a connection forged in a past life, one that shaped who he is. She, meanwhile, doesn't even know who he is, let alone what they meant to each other. This drives Sylus to desperation. He orchestrates events to make her remember. He forces her to resonate with him, even has her shoot him through the heart. Each act is like this plea for recognition, a cry to awaken something lost. But this isn't the same MC he once knew. This version of her has been fractured by trauma, and to her, Sylus is a stranger with terrifying intensity. Eventually, Sylus comes to learn the painful truth. The reason she cannot resonate with him is rooted in that trauma.
You see, her evol is special. It utilizes the waves generated by the human brain's magnetic field. Maybe her brain's magnetic field produces repulsive waves against you. That's why she can't resonate with you.
Get to the point.
To make a long story short, on a subconscious level, she's either rejecting you, scared of you, or, disgusted by you.
This is what prompts Sylus to begin taking huge steps back. Her love must be willingly given to him, regardless of their soul connection. As their relationship slowly begins to heal and evolve, one moment that beautifully captures Sylus's understanding of consent happens in Night of Secrecy. By this point, there's been a shift. MC has started to lower her guard, and Sylus too has softened, no longer led by past assumptions, but by the present connection they share. In this scene, he leans in and he asks her,
Do you want it, kitten?
Now, on the surface, it's a flirtatious line, teasing, intimate, charged with tension. But underneath the playful tone is something quieter, more vulnerable. He's not just asking for consent in that moment, he's asking for something deeper. Do you want this? Do you want me? Not because of their shared past, not because of some ancient bond, but because she wants it, because it's her choice. And that distinction is everything. Consent, especially in a relationship with this much history and emotional imbalance, isn't just about hearing a yes. It's about knowing that that yes is freely given, not shaped by guilt, pressure, or a sense of obligation. As the American Psychological Association puts it, true consent is voluntary, informed, and given by someone with the capacity to decide freely. Now, there's a beautiful moment in Magnum Opus while MC and Sylus are out on a date, and it illustrates the point that Sylus is not assuming MC's given consent, despite the fact that at this point they've already slept together. Take a look at this interaction.
If you feel that guilty, then let me rest at your place later. Ah, yes. Your sofa and hard floor are incredibly comfortable to sleep on. I'd definitely give up my custom-made luxury mattress for them. Of course I am.
Now, on the surface, it comes across as quite playful, but it actually reveals something much deeper. He's making space for her autonomy and her consent. Sylus doesn't assume he's entitled to her bed just because they previously slept together. Of course, he doesn't get everything right from the start. Sylus does make mistakes. He assumes familiarity too quickly and tries to recreate moments from their past in the hope that it will spark recognition, and doesn't always realise how different this version of MC is from the one he remembers. But when he sees that his presence overwhelms her, he steps back. That kind of self-awareness, especially in a character framed as intense and morally grey, is rare and important. It tells us that Sylus isn't driven by what he wants, he's guided by what she needs. Ultimately, Sylus's approach to consent isn't just about being respectful. It's about restoring balance in a relationship where the scales are tilted from the start. By choosing not to push, not to demand, and not to assume, he makes room for something much more meaningful: trust. And in a story where so much is built on memory, fate, and power, that trust becomes the real foundation for whatever comes next. Autonomy is at the heart of every meaningful relationship. Not just the freedom to act, but the freedom to feel, to change, to decide who we are and who we let in. Psychological research tells us that autonomy isn't just about independence. It's essential to mental and emotional well-being. Now, according to self-determination theory, autonomy is one of 3 core human needs, along with competence and relatedness. When autonomy is undermined through manipulation, pressure, or loss of agency, it leads to distress, disconnection, and a weakened sense of self. In contrast, when our autonomy is respected, we're more likely to feel secure, motivated, and open to intimacy. Sylus's behaviour mirrors this principle almost perfectly. He doesn't try to force a relationship. He doesn't position it himself as her answer or her fate. Instead, he gives MC space to rediscover herself. He lets her ask questions, make mistakes, and even push him away. He knows what it's like to have his autonomy stripped away, both as a dragon hunted for what he is, and as a man branded a villain for surviving. When it comes to MC, he refuses to be another person who tries to shape her into what he needs. This approach is especially significant when we view it through the lens of trauma. In trauma-informed psychological care, one of the core components of healing is the restoration of agency. As outlined by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, survivors of trauma need environments where they are allowed to make choices, because trauma often comes from having choice taken away. Sylus perhaps instinctively creates that environment. Not perfectly, he stumbles, especially early on, but once he recognises MC's emotional state, he steps back. He lets her walk out. He doesn't try to win her over through guilt or pressure. Instead, he waits, quietly rebuilding trust, not through promises, but through presence. And over time, that makes all the difference. One of the most poignant moments of Sylus honouring MC's autonomy comes from the phone call As You Wish. In it, MC confides in him, voicing that she's overwhelmed and that life has become too much to bear. Sylus doesn't push. He doesn't demand explanations or even try to fix her. Instead, he offers a quiet, unwavering presence. Whatever she needs to heal, he will give her. Listen to this exchange.
Rest if you're tired, cry if you're sad. Don't do it if you don't want to. I'll be there every step of the way. I'll kick them away. Don't you have the password to the armory and complete control over Unakainis? We can help you conquer Earth and outer space. whichever you prefer. And as your accomplice, I'll run away with you. I'm a dangerous person, yet you still hold my hand, kitten. Of course I am, but between you opening up and me prying, I prefer the former.
Sylus responds without any hesitation. In this phone call, Sylus really does honour her trauma and her pain. This is Sylus saying, I love you without question, without fear. Wherever your pain takes you, I'll go, even if it's to the darkest depths of your soul. The soulmate trope is one of the most enduring in romance. It speaks to a universal longing, that somewhere out there is someone who's made for us, a person whose presence feels like coming home. Now, that idea is often literalized, two souls tied across lifetimes, pulled together by fate, magic, or cosmic design. It really is a beautiful concept, and when it's done well, it can lead to some of the most emotionally powerful moments in storytelling. But just like any other trope, it does come with potential complications, especially when the idea of destiny starts to blur the line between love and obligation. What makes Sylus so compelling to me is that he exists within the soulmate framework, but he doesn't behave the way these kinds of characters usually do. He's not trying to claim MC because of their past. He doesn't act like her soul bond to him entitles him to her present. To understand just how unique this is, it's worth briefly looking at the traditional shape of the soulmate trope. In its most common form, especially in genre fiction, soulmates are presented as fated or meant to be. Often that means love is fast-tracked. Characters fall hard and fast, with destiny serving as an emotional shorthand. The tension comes from external forces trying to keep them apart, not from the characters themselves needing time or space. And while that's not inherently bad, a lot of people love this dynamic, and rightfully so, it doesn't leave much room for characters to choose each other freely, especially if one has more information or memory than the other. Sylus turns that structure on its head. He remembers everything. MC remembers nothing. He has every narrative excuse to push the bond, to use their shared history as justification for their closeness, but he doesn't. He doesn't ask her to remember their past. He doesn't expect her to feel what he feels. And even when he desperately wants to bridge the gap between them, he doesn't try to fill that distance with pressure or manipulation. Instead, he allows her the space to feel confused, to feel conflicted, to feel nothing at all if that's where she's at. In doing so, Sylus gently subverts the core idea that soulmates must always come together. For him, love isn't about inevitability. It's about reciprocity. The bond they share isn't a chain, it's a thread. And he holds it loosely, hoping she'll choose to pick it up. This shift is important because it reframes the soulmate connection not as an emotional shortcut, but as a starting point. A history that adds depth, but not one that replaces the need to build something real in the present. And for Sylus, for all his longing and loneliness, never stops honouring that process. He doesn't rewrite the soulmate trope entirely. Instead, he expands on it. He shows us that fate might tie two souls together, but love still needs to be earned, nurtured, and chosen. And when it is, it's worth far more than anything written in the stars. Sylus isn't just a love interest, he's a narrative shift. In a story built on soul bonds, lost memories, and the weight of fate, he could have easily followed a familiar path, one where destiny justifies dominance, where love is owed rather than chosen. But instead, Sylus does something much rarer and far more meaningful. He waits, he listens, he steps back, and in doing so, he redefines what it means to love someone in a world where choice is so often stripped away. His presence in Love and Deepspace gently challenges the traditional soulmate trope, not by rejecting it outright, but by adding nuance and care to how it plays out. The bond between him and MC is still intense, still cosmic, still brimming with history. But Silus never treats that bond as a claim. He never uses it to bypass consent or override MC's autonomy. Even when she forgets him, even when she fears him, he doesn't try to force her into remembering who they were. Instead, he gives her the space to figure out who she is now, and whether he belongs in that story. That space, that choice, is everything. Psychological research tells us that healthy relationships are built not just on connection, but on respect for individual agency. Autonomy is central to emotional well-being, especially in the aftermath of trauma. And Silus's behaviour, his restraint, his patience, his refusal to manipulate, mirrors what real-world therapists and psychologists define as emotionally secure, respectful love. It's love that empowers, not consume. In a genre full of epic love stories shaped by destiny, Silus shows us a different kind of epic, one built not on inevitability, but on mutual recognition. One that asks, what if you're meant to be, but only if you both want it? And that question, more than any grand gesture or soul-deep connection, is what makes his story resonate so deeply. Silus reminds us that love, even when written in the stars, still needs to be chosen here on Earth. And when that choice is made freely, despite fear, despite history, despite fate, it means more than any prophecy ever could.